Alright guys, so here we are today. This is actually my wife's turkey hunting gun, and I had to take it apart last night because she got rained on. And we just wanted to give it a good thorough cleaning, and I wanted to show you a couple things about it. This is a Tristar semi-auto. This is Tristar Viper. It is a youth model because my wife's 5'1", fits her really well. It's a 20 gauge, and I want to show you kind of how this thing works. So first of all, make sure it's unloaded. So you've got this lever in front of the trigger guard here, and you got to flip that lever, okay? And that actually allows the bolt to lock open or for you to load a shell. So every time you load this gun, you load the tube, and then you got to flip that lever. That actually locks this cover plate here, locks this cover plate so you can't load any more ammo, and it allows your carrier to pick up the shell, load the shell, allows the carrier to lock back, the bolt to lock back. So anyway, verify that it is unloaded. I want to show you how this thing works, how to take it apart for cleaning. In a lot of ways, it is similar to a Remington 870. The big difference is the spring is under the forend here and not in the stock. The Remington 870, the spring is in the stock, and there's no spring under the forend. So the spring's under the forend. It's actually a little easier to get back together, a little easier to work on. So anyway, you're going to take your end nut here off, okay? And it's pretty tight, because I always get it really tight because I don't want it coming loose. This is an aftermarket. This is not the one that came with this one because she wants a sling on her gun. So it's an aftermarket, and it's got the sling swivel on it. The Tristars, here's the plug, okay? The plug just goes in this little hole. So here's your end plate, and this is rolled over, keeps that end plate in. And the plug just goes right there. So there's your plug that keeps you legal. It'll only hold 2 in the tube and 1 in the chamber. Okay. The other thing is an aftermarket extended turkey choke. It's a Carlson's aftermarket turkey choke here. So, but anyway, you're going to take that plug off. You're going to take your forend off, right? Just like most semi-auto shotguns. And you see here's your spring, and it's compressed. And I'm going to grab a hold of that. Here's your release button. Get a good grip on that, pressure release, ease that thing forward, and as you ease that forward, your barrel should come off pretty easily now. Okay, so there's your barrel off. Okay, so the barrel's off, and then to get this thing out, to get the bolt out, to finish disassembling this and get everything clean here. You actually have to, I'm going to get a close-up of this in a second, you actually have to get the bolt in exactly the right position for this bolt handle to come out. So it's actually a really simple design. So let me show you how to do that. All right, guys, so here we are. This is kind of a close-up. I want to give you a close-up of this. So here we are. So here's this handle's got to come out, and I'm actually going to press back on the carrier. So I actually press right here. I press on the gas piston. Compresses this, it moves the bolt back, okay? And if you watch, this bolt handle at a certain point will actually travel rearward, okay? And then when you get right up here at the front, so the bolt has kind of some play. This is your locking mechanism for your bolt. And what you got to do, guys, and I'll show you this when I get it lined up, is get it in that travel spot. And right here, you got this notch. You see it down there in the silver? It's got to line up, and I'm going to move it so that it's not lined up. That notch has to line up right there. And then this guy has this big groove on it that fits down in that notch. Okay, so that's falls right in when you're lined up. Okay, and then all of this just comes out. It's that easy. Take your O-ring off the end here. Okay, so take your rubber O-ring off the end. That whole assembly slides out. Okay, so that's how you take that apart. So let me back this thing up a little bit here. We're too close now, right? So in this order, right, your spring, you got your bolt carrier, your gas piston here, and your O-ring and your handle. Okay, so that's that. The only other thing you can do, and I take it out like once a year and scrub it, but I had to take it out last night because it was wet. She'd gotten rain all inside the action here, is to take the trigger group out. Now, if you're familiar with Remington shotguns, they have 2 pins, and they pull straight out. The Tristar has 1 pin. It just has the 1 pin, and I don't have the hammer handy, but if you see back here, this is notched into the stock. This is notched into the stock. So you'll drive this pin out and you'll slide all of this forward. And I mean just a millimeter, millimeter and a half. Slide it forward and then rotate the front down, okay? And that's it. That's as far apart as you can take this gun. As a matter of fact, let me go get a hammer and I'll show you guys that. All right, so let me show you how to do this trigger guard. So I'm going to pick all this up and move it out of the way. And I'm going to show you in detail how all of that goes back on. And of course, you'd clean it before you did that. Just move the barrel there, move the receiver here. Now, the way I do this is to put something under the gun to get one end up, okay? And it can be anything, but put something under the gun to get that end up. Or I've got these two boards here that I film on so I don't scar up this antique dresser. And you just line that pin up with that gap in the boards. You put your punch there and you give it a few whacks. Okay, so we got our pin started here. See it sticking out of our frame pretty good. You just finish pulling that out by hand. To get the trigger group out is easy. To get it back in is a pain, and I'm gonna show you guys that. So you're gonna pull this thing forward just a little. Okay, you see that gap? See that gap in the frame there? And then rotate it down and it pops out and you hear this click noise. So let me show you what just happened. So this guy here, get in here so you can see this. Your bolt release is right here. This is your bolt hold open right here. That's your bolt hold open right there. Okay, so when you put this back together, you're going to have to make sure that's out of the way or the trigger group will not go in. And the easiest way to do that's actually just hold that button down. Okay, so to put it back together is the reverse. You're going to get this thing in here. Okay, and I was showing you the notch. Here's the notch. Okay, so here's the notch. This guy right here catches right here underneath this. There's a notch there. Okay, so that catches there. So you have to be forward of that for it to slide in. Okay, so you have to be far enough forward that it'll slide in, and you got to press this down all the way until it goes past it. Okay, so you press your bolt release and then slide it back so that it catches in that groove. Okay, and make sure it's far. There you go, and it's snapped in. Okay, and then I like to come up here and line that hole up so I can see all the way through. That looks pretty close. And a lot of times I'll take a pin. I'll actually take my pin punch and I'll just use that to make sure it's lined up. And then we get our pin and we drive our pin back in. I can't find my pin. That always happens when I'm filming. It probably fell down somewhere and I'm bumping into my camera here. There it is. Slid up under my bolt. Okay. Take your pin, and I like to, if I can, push it in by hand as best as I can. And that one went pretty easily. And we'll just finish tapping that in with a brass hammer. Do note that I'm using brass and not steel. Okay, so that I don't mar the shotgun. This shotgun is an aluminum frame, so you don't want to beat on it too much. Okay. It is a turkey hunting gun, though, and it's a cheap gun, and we got it because we go hunting in the rain, and we go, it's for hunting. We don't mind if it gets scratched up and all that good jazz, okay? So, now, how do we put all this back together? Let me zoom out a little bit. Let me show you the process here. So, here's your carrier, okay? This is your carrier as it comes out. Sometimes this piece here will fall off, okay? It's going to line up. See these two little tabs here? They're going to go under, and that's going to be on the bottom, okay? So, that's going to be on the bottom. And then the bolt will go on the top. And the bolt has to go extractor forward, firing pin in the back. So there's your firing pin there. Okay, so there's how your bolt sits up there. And you see the locking mechanism work. So when I slide this back and forward, you see it unlock and lock, unlock and lock. Okay, so you see that process there. Okay, so all of that's one piece and it's ready to go in the gun. Okay, the spring will go on first. That's the fun part. That's the part you get to fight with. And then your bolt carrier goes on. Okay, and this thing slides right in. It should be no resistance, no issue whatsoever. It should slide right in. And then you have to hold it. And again, zoom in. If I can get it to zoom, my fingers are not working on the camera here. There we go. You got to line that notch up. Okay, remember I showed you that notch earlier? You got to slide it backwards and forward. You got to line that notch up right there. Put this guy in, and then let go. And what happens is that thing's not lined up with the notch except for one little tiny spot in the whole travel of this bolt. And basically that keeps all this from flying out. Okay, that keeps all of that from flying out. So then once you got all that back in, if you're a bird hunter, make sure you put your plug. Oh, I missed something. I missed something. Look at that. I made a mistake. I said something looked funny. I know what looks funny now. I had to pull all this back out because I missed something. Okay, so pull that back out. Pull all that back out. Okay. You have to have your gas piston. Have to have your gas piston. Your gas piston will not work. Your gun will not work without a gas piston. And the way this goes on, if I actually put it back together right for you guys so that you can see it work, is your bolt carrier goes on, and then your gas piston goes on. So I didn't actually have to take this back apart. Okay, but you do have to have your gas piston. So you have to have your gas piston. Gas piston goes there. Okay, so the gas piston goes in front of this whole thing, and it pushes down. That's what causes all of this thing to work without the gas piston. And I'm going to go ahead and lock this back. Okay, so lock it back. There we are. If you're a bird hunter, make sure you put your plug back in so that you're legal. Because most states have capacities for bird hunting. Okay, so make sure you get your O-ring back on. And then you got to put your barrel back on. And to put your barrel back on, you cannot leave this in the locked open position. I've tried. I'll try again just to show you. But there's not enough clearance. Okay, what's going to happen is this thick part of the barrel where it locks into the frame is actually hitting this guy here. You actually have to let this forward and get into this gap where there's just the rails. Okay, so what I do, what I do is I get hung up on everything trying to do this on camera. Try again. Just let this guy about right there. Not all the way forward, but about part way forward. Okay? And what you got to do is you got to get it so that you can line this up with this part of the rails where there's no metal. That's the only way this thing will go. So you got to let it far enough forward that you can get past that, but far enough back that you can get this started. Okay, so you want to hold it back just a little bit. You see I'm holding it back with my thumb, and that's all it takes. And then once you get it far enough, I'm going to flip my little lever here. Once you get it far enough, you can lock the bolt open just to get it out from under spring tension. Okay, and again, that little lever for this gun is at the front of the trigger guard. Okay, get your barrel back, and then put your fore-end back, put your fore-end nut on, you're good to go. That's as far apart as you can take a Tristar shotgun, at least this model. Okay, and put your fore-end nut back on. So we'll put that there. And then just for me, because this is a semi-auto and there's a lot of moving parts, I always just double check my function when I'm done. So I'm going to let this bolt fall. I'm going to pull the trigger. So I'll show you how I do that. So I'll let the bolt fall. Pull the trigger. Right. Make sure that, turn the safety off. That'll help. Right. Click. Cool. Lock open. Cool. Now check, make sure this functions. Right. Lock. Okay. So these guns are really weird. So you load it, right? So it's ready to load. You load your shells through your loading gate here. Load, 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 right? When you pull this back, it will not pick up a shell. It will not pick up a shell. It'll literally open and close. A shell will not feed until you flip this lever right here. That gate locks. You cannot load anymore. Now it'll pick up a shell when you rack the bolt. Okay, it's the way they make them. It is different if you grew up shooting a Remington or a Mossberg, but that is how the Tristar makes them, at least this model. You just get used to it, to be honest with you, but that's kind of how you take this gun down. Take the trigger group out. It is one pin. It's pretty simple to drive out. Like I said, just find a gap in 2 pieces of wood or support one end of the gun or the other, and just tap it out, and then you pull it forward and then pull it down. It all comes out as one piece trigger group, so it's real easy to use. Real easy to take the bolt out, way easier than some of the other designs out there. So anyway, if you have questions about this gun, it's a neat little gun. When we first got it, it would not shoot bird shot. It would only shoot high-powered loads. We've had several hundred shells through it now, probably 200-300 shells through it. And now it's pretty reliable with everything. It runs the low brass, the trap loads, reliably. But of course, the turkey loads, it loves the turkey loads. It slings those things like 15 feet. The hulls are way over to the right when you shoot those. Great little gun. She likes it. It fits her well. It's very light, very handy for carrying in the woods. And it was bought for her to use for turkey hunting. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Appreciate your support.